Welcome to Day 8 on the Trail. We have 4 readings for today from Luke chapter 4, verses 1 through 30, Genesis 11, verse 27 through 13:18, the 15th Psalm, and the Wisdom of Sirach chapter 7, verses 1 through 36. In the story of the temptation of Jesus found in Luke 4, we have a connection between the temptation of Jesus in the wilderness and Israel's sojourn in the wilderness of Sinai in Exodus. For example, Jesus fasts in the wilderness for 40 days. In the Exodus experience, Moses met with God on Mount Sinai for 40 days. While he was there, he also fasted for a period of 40 days. As a nation, Israel is tested in the wilderness for 40 years, which is another connection to the number 40. And I would also like to add that the prophet Elijah experiences a 40-day pilgrimage to Mount Sinai, which is also known as Mount Horeb. While in the wilderness, Jesus is led by the Spirit to be tempted by the devil. To best understand the nature of the temptations, we need to pay close attention to how Jesus responds to each of the 3 temptations by quoting from Deuteronomy. The first temptation centers around God's provision. Here, Jesus is tempted to turn stones into bread. However, this is not simply about food. After all, is it a sin for Jesus to make food? No. Later in the Gospels, Jesus will feed thousands with a few loaves and fish. At a wedding in Cana, he will turn water into wine. Therefore, there's nothing wrong with miraculously created food and drink. So what is the real temptation here? To answer this question, we look to Jesus' response. As with this and every temptation, Jesus looks back to the instructions which God gave to Moses and Israel during their 40 years in the wilderness. For this first temptation, Jesus' answer is taken directly from Deuteronomy chapter 8, verses 2 through 3, which read, "Remember the long way that the Lord your God has led you these 40 years in the wilderness, in order to humble you, testing you to know what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep his commandments. He humbled you by letting you hunger, then by feeding you with manna, with which neither you nor your ancestors were acquainted, in order to make you understand that one does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord." The second temptation focuses on our priorities. Will we place God first in our lives? The devil offers Jesus authority over the entire world. Now I have to wonder, can Satan really offer this? Are the kingdoms of the world his to give away? This seems very strange until we read the response of Jesus. Again, he is quoting from Deuteronomy. In this passage, Moses is talking to the new generation of Israelites who are about to enter the promised land after 40 years, and he offers them a final set of instructions. From Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 10 through 13. "When the Lord your God has brought you into the land that he swore to your ancestors, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give you a land with fine, large cities that you did not build, houses filled with all sorts of goods that you did not fill, hewn cisterns that you did not hew, vineyards and olive groves that you did not plant. And when you have eaten your fill, take care that you do not forget the Lord, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. The Lord your God you shall fear, him you shall serve, and by his name alone you shall swear." This temptation was centered on our priorities and not becoming complacent in our dedication to our ultimate allegiance to God. Now, the final temptation recorded in Luke is not just a temptation of Jesus alone, but testing God's presence. Satan is basically telling Jesus, make God catch you. Make God prove he is with you. Again, Jesus answers from Deuteronomy. This time, chapter 6, verse 16. Do not put the Lord your God to the test, as you tested him at Massa. So what happened at Massa? In this story from Exodus, the people were getting thirsty, and there was no water around, so they started complaining. So God provided water right there in the middle of a desert, coming out of a rock. Then in Exodus 17:7, it is written, He called the place Massa, which means testing, and Meribah, which means complaining, because the Israelites quarreled and tested the Lord, saying, Is the Lord among us or not? There's a big difference between trusting God and making deals or ultimatums with God. Attempts to manipulate God are just another form of idolatry. The story ends by saying that the temptations of Jesus are not really over. In fact, we hear echoes of this experience of Jesus in the wilderness from Luke 23, verse 37. During the crucifixion, those in the crowd say, If you're the king of the Jews, save yourself, which sounds a lot like the third temptation found in Luke 4. In Genesis 12, we find an important transition to the story of a singular family. We begin with Abram's journey to Canaan. This is not only a physical journey into the unknown, to a place that God will show him when he arrives, but this is also an inward journey. This story opens with a very unique Hebrew phrase, lech lecha, which means literally, go to yourself. This says so much more than go to the place I'll show you. This is more than a physical journey. Instead, Abram, I want you to go to yourself while you're on the journey. In fact, this is the same construction, lech lecha, that will appear at the end of the Abraham cycle in Genesis 22, the story that we call the Akedah, or the near sacrifice of Isaac. There we have an important set of bookends, or an inclusio, that is marked by this very unique phrase, go to yourself. Here, one of the central points that we will discover in the story of Abraham is the inward journey of faith. Finally today, we are going to look at Psalm 15. Psalm 15 asks an interesting question. Who is it that can dwell in God's tent? Who is it that can go meet God on his mountain? The answer to this question is found in three triads, or three sets of three. The first triad says, it's a person who walks with integrity, who does what is right, who speaks with truth in their heart. Therefore, the first triad is really an inward reflection. Who am I? What is my true character and integrity? The second triad moves outward from there. Who is it that has not taken slander upon their tongue? Who has not done evil to their friend? Who has not taken up reproach against their neighbor? So, once our interior character and integrity have been evaluated in the first triad, we move outward to those closest to us, our family, friends, and neighbors in the second triad. The third triad then reaches out even further. In the final triad, we find those who keep an oath to their hurt, who do not falter, who has not lent their silver at interest, and who has not taken a bribe against the innocent. Throughout Psalm 15, we find a movement from our inner character to our interaction with those closest to us, to how we interact with our community at large. And we should note that God cares deeply about all three. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, stay on the trail.